Somewhere in rural Texas, a construction crew showed up one morning to start pouring concrete for what was supposed to be a $1 billion AI data center. 3 weeks later, the trucks were gone. No announcement, no press release, just silence. And that silence is happening all over America right now. For the last 2 years, we've been told a very simple story. AI is the future. Whoever builds the most data centers wins. So build faster, build bigger, build everywhere. Hundreds of billions of dollars poured into steel, silicon, and concrete, racing against the clock. But somewhere between 2025 and 2026, something quietly broke. Not with a dramatic crash, not with a single company collapsing, just a slow, awkward retreat that nobody wanted to talk about out loud. Let's start with the number that should stop you in your tracks. In just the first 3 months of 2026, roughly $130 billion worth of AI data center projects were blocked, delayed, or quietly canceled across the United States. To put that in perspective, that's almost as much as the entire previous year combined. And this wasn't Wall Street getting cold feet. This was regular towns, city councils, farmers, neighbors standing up in local meetings and saying, "Not here." Take Indianapolis. Google had a deal on the table, a $1 billion data center just outside the city. Everything was ready. Papers drawn up, incentives promised, the whole show. Then, actual minutes, before the city council was set to vote it down, Google simply walked away. No fight, no appeal, they just left. That's not an isolated story anymore. Lawmakers introduced more than 300 data center bills in just the first 6 weeks of 2026. 14 states floated outright bans on new construction. Something had shifted in the public mood, and the industry felt it. But here's what's even stranger. It's not just angry neighborhoods stopping these projects. The tech giants themselves are pulling back, quietly, on their own. Microsoft is the clearest example. Reports surfaced that the company had canceled leases across the US and Europe, totaling roughly 2 gigawatts of planned capacity over just 6 months. They walked away from sites in Indonesia, Australia, the UK, Illinois, North Dakota, Wisconsin. A location between London and Cambridge that was supposed to house next-generation chips? Gone. A site near Chicago? Gone. Now officially, Microsoft called this flexibility. Their spokesperson said the changes simply demonstrate how adaptable their strategy is. Sure, nothing says confidence like abandoning gigawatts of infrastructure you spent years planning, but analysts weren't buying the polished explanation. One research note pointed out something telling. Microsoft's own CEO admitted in an interview around the same time that there would be, in his words, an overbuild of AI infrastructure. Read that again. The man running one of the largest AI infrastructure operations on Earth basically said, "We built too much." So why does this matter to you? Because for 2 years, the entire tech industry sold us a narrative of inevitability. More compute, forever. More data centers, forever. Endless demand, endless growth. And what we're watching now is that narrative colliding with reality. And Microsoft isn't alone. Even OpenAI's massive, headline-grabbing Stargate project, the $500 billion infrastructure push in Texas, has reportedly stalled in places, with construction falling behind the original timeline that was announced with so much fanfare. Remember the renderings? The confident press conferences? Reality has been a lot messier than the slideshow. There's an old playbook here, too. Analysts pointed out that Microsoft's current retreat looks a lot like what Meta did back in 2022 when it canceled a wave of data center leases tied to its metaverse bet. Different buzzword, same pattern. Announce big, overcommit, quietly walk it back once the bill comes due. Meanwhile, some smaller players are trying to turn this chaos into opportunity. One company reportedly spent 4 years quietly securing over a gigawatt of cheap, clean power capacity across Norway and Finland, permitted long before the American backlash even started. While projects in the US sit frozen in limbo, waiting on permits, power, and public approval, construction at their Nordic sites is racing ahead on schedule. Sometimes the smartest move in a gold rush isn't digging faster, it's digging somewhere nobody else thought to look. And it's not just about money or megawatts. Communities are pushing back for very real, very human reasons. Concerns about water use, since some data centers use staggering amounts of water for cooling. Concerns about noise, from generators and cooling systems running around the clock. Concerns about utility rates quietly climbing for regular families, while massive new facilities strain the same power grid everyone else depends on. People aren't opposing the future. They're opposing being asked to pay for it without ever being asked first. Here's the uncomfortable math nobody wants to say on an earnings call. Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft together are still expected to pour more than $650 billion into AI infrastructure in 2026 alone. That's not a typo. $650 billion in a single year from 4 companies. But against that staggering wall of money, only a fraction of the physical capacity is actually being built. Industry estimates suggest that against roughly 16 gigawatts of announced 2026 projects, only about 5 gigawatts are actually under construction. The rest exists mostly on paper: announcements, press releases, promises. And even the projects that do have money and permits are hitting a wall that no amount of cash can fix. Power. Actual electricity. Data centers need enormous, constant streams of energy, and the power grid simply cannot keep up. Some projects are now reportedly facing waits of up to 5 years just to get connected to the grid. Think about that. The most well-funded companies on the planet, and they're stuck waiting in line for electricity like everyone else. Then there's the chip and memory shortage. As AI data centers gobble up every available component, prices for memory and storage have reportedly jumped nearly 5 times over in some categories. That's squeezing out regular consumers too, driving up the cost of your next laptop or phone, all because of a race most people never even asked for. And remember, this entire frenzy didn't start in a vacuum. A big trigger point was the arrival of a much cheaper Chinese AI model that reportedly matched the performance of far more expensive systems. Suddenly, the assumption that winning AI required infinite, unlimited spending started to look shaky. If a fraction of the budget can get you close to the same result, why are you still building at full speed? That single moment sent a quiet shockwave through boardrooms. Because if raw spending isn't the only path to staying competitive, then every gigawatt of half-built infrastructure suddenly looks less like an investment and a lot more like a very expensive bet that hasn't paid off yet. So here's the real picture forming. It's not that AI is failing. It's not that data centers are disappearing. It's that the industry massively overestimated how fast it could build, how much power it could secure, and how much public goodwill it could spend. And now, quietly, without a dramatic announcement, without anyone standing up and saying, "We got this wrong," companies are unwinding the excess, canceling leases, walking away from land deals, letting statements of intent quietly expire instead of becoming real contracts. Some analysts compare this to a company hoarding tickets to every possible outcome, then slowly returning the ones it knows it will never actually use. Overbuilding as insurance, followed by a slow, silent cleanup once reality sets in. There's also a much quieter financial worry running underneath all of this. A growing number of these massive AI infrastructure deals involve companies investing in each other, chip makers backing cloud providers backing AI labs promising to buy compute from the very companies investing in them. It's a tightly woven web of promises. And when one part of that web slows down, tugs get felt everywhere else. Investors have started asking a very uncomfortable question out loud. How much of this eye-watering spending is driven by genuine demand? And how much of it is companies desperately trying not to look like they're falling behind their rivals? But here's what should genuinely worry you. This isn't just a story about wasted concrete and empty warehouses. It's a story about trust. For years, we were told this AI infrastructure boom was unstoppable, inevitable, too big to slow down. And yet here we are, watching some of the most powerful companies on Earth quietly hit the brakes when nobody's looking. So what happens next? If the pattern holds, expect more of these flexibility announcements, more quiet lease cancellations dressed up as strategy, more local backlash forcing companies to rethink where and how fast they build, and maybe, just maybe, a slower, more honest version of the AI boom, one where growth is real instead of just promised. If you're an investor, an employee, or just someone watching from the outside, the lesson here isn't that AI is over. It's that the loudest, most confident announcements in this industry deserve the same scrutiny you'd give any other billion-dollar promise. Ask what's actually been built, not just what's been announced. Ask who's actually connected to the power grid, not just who signed a press release. Because in this industry right now, the gap between the announcement and the reality has never been wider. Because in the end, the story was never really about data centers. It was about how far confidence can outrun reality, before reality quietly, patiently, catches up. And right now, it just did. Every week on Unseen Drafts, we break down the real economics behind the businesses and technologies shaping the world, not the hype, the actual numbers. If that is your thing, subscribe now.